Welcome to the Ball Filmcast. I am Bryce Thompson, here with Cody Ryrie, and we have a special guest today. We've had him on before, book author Jacopo Della Quercia.
Jacopo Della Quercia, but you can call me Giacomo if it makes it easier.
Yeah. See, I'm just a white boy from Idaho, and my education is probably on the lower side, so that'll be my excuse for butchering your name.
Don't worry about it. It's been happening my entire life. I'd rather have people butcher my pen name than my real name.
That makes nice. Okay, well, just to get started, we're going to avoid current events in our discussion.
Oh.
They can come up. It's not a ban. I'm not placing bans on anything. But we're going to try and just ignore current events just for our own sanity's sake for the next 30, 45 minutes. So,
that's perfectly fine. I will not give you any alternative facts.
That's good. That's wonderful. It'd be a breath of fresh air. Anyway, real quick, a couple weeks ago we were saddened to hear that John Hurt had passed away, one of our favorite actors, myriad of amazing performances. Jacopo, we wanted to know what somebody's never seen a John Hurt movie. First off, we pity them. Second off, where do they start? What's a performance that's just fantastic that helps you to get in touch with all of John Hurt's John Hurtiness?
Well, it's so interesting because he had so many different roles from each other. I mean, I really think that a great contrast in terms of his range is you compare 1984 to V for Vendetta, where he goes from being basically a peon in a dictatorial state to being in charge of it. But for the introduction to John Hurt, and actually there are people who are wiser about this than I am, in my opinion, I really think you should just go chronologically. And I think that the iconic role that John Hurt played in Alien, I mean, I alluded to this on Twitter. If I could have had any death scene that I would forever be known for in cinema, I would want that death scene. It was remarkable. It's the kind of thing that I hear Ridley Scott, he deliberately kept a lot of actors in the dark about what would be happening. It is truly it is a happening, is what it is. You're watching real fear, real horror on these people's faces. It must have been an incredible experience. It must have been a very uncomfortable one for him, but not simply because he's imagining an alien is coming out, but just because of the apparatus involved. But he is an actor who was deeply, deeply, deeply admired by those who knew him. I had the pleasure of speaking to a Shakespeare historian a few months ago who had met him over in England. Everyone who I know who worked with him said he was a wonderful man. He had a career that was consistently expert. And it's like he's the kind of actor who, it's pretty interesting. He's an actor who I would compare a little bit like Batman. He's not the leading role that, studios want, but he's the kind of actor that audiences deserve. Like, we deserve actors who are as consistently, talented and really just able to give such a remarkable performance that makes you fall in love with the actor behind them.
Yeah, I want to talk briefly about that scene you mentioned in Alien. I got to see Alien in the New Beverly Cinema in Los Angeles a couple months ago. Well,
hold on, just to clarify, are you talking Alien or Aliens?
Alien.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Poor John Hurt did not make it to Aliens, as we know. He, like I said, had the perfect death scene, which was also a birth scene. So look at that. Anyway, there was several people in the audience who had never seen Alien before, and when that scene came up, I've seen it, 560 times. So I was able to watch them and their reaction, and there was this combination of horror, fascination, just this kind of all these emotions, and then afterwards there was a pause. It was totally silent, and there was spontaneous applause. So it was kind of this miniature drama in this one scene in the middle of this incredible, film. And I've never seen it with an audience before. I'd only seen it by myself. And so, yeah, incredible. And I think you can't understand the acting involved in that scene. I mean, he is communicating agony that none of us hopefully will ever experience, and he's doing it in a way that's so pure, and it's just a level of craft you don't see all the time. So, yeah, I wanted to just reemphasize, I totally agree with you on that point.
Yeah, you just like see this emotional sea change going over his face, and I think I imagine the moment where there was silence, because when the chest buster first punches its way through his chest, there's this scream shared by the actors, and then just this pause where there's just no oxygen in the room, just this shared dread by everyone. And I don't know, I would have loved to have seen that myself. I don't know if you've heard this, on YouTube, someone was able to find a recording of an audience in 1977 seeing Star Wars in theaters for the first time. And during the Death Star Trench Run, which I personally believe the Death Star Trench Run is one of the most brilliantly edited moments in cinema. I mean, they just had a few camera angles of models and just videos of people inside of, like a little makeshift fighter. And they were able to create that heart-pounding chase scene in the Death Star Trench. There is pure silence during the climax of that film until Han Solo shows up and goes, Yahoo! And then the theater is just cheering and cheering and cheering. They realize, holy shit, the good guys are going to win. And then boom, they blow up the Death Star. Huge applause. Like that's the kind of historical artifact that I wish we had more of. I would have loved to have seen audiences actually diving out of the way of, early motion picture cinema. There's this one film that's one of the first films ever made. It was simply called The Arrival of a Train at a Station, where it's just a train. It's like a 10-second long clip of a train pulling into a station. And the American Film Institute, in their television special 100 Years, 100 Thrills, the 100 most heart-pounding American films, Harrison Ford, in his introduction, he discusses how when this film premiered, people were fainting in theaters. People were diving out of the way. They thought film was a new experience, and they thought that this was a train actually coming in. And when Harrison Ford says that's so remarkable, he said that audiences came back. They wanted to see it again and again, and thus the movie thrill was born.
Huh. There are so many instances that you think about in film history. I guess the only one I can think of, and we're totally on a tangent. Oh, well, I like this tangent.
Tangents are good.
The only time I can think of in my lifetime, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but when The Dark Knight came out, and I remember being there opening day when The Dark Knight came out, and there's the one moment when the Joker has somebody tied up, and he does a video of them where he's talking to, I think his name's Brian or something like that, and afterwards, bad things are going to happen to Brian, and the camera cuts, and there's no sound in the soundtrack. And I remember you could have heard a pin drop in the audience. Everybody was just shocked. And then also later on in the film, when they do that big car chase, and that Joker music starts to kind of creep in, that electronic kind of nails on a chalkboard thing, I remember people around me groaned because they could feel like, oh, he's somewhere. Where is he? The Joker's around. Where is he? And that was the kind of experience I imagine I'll tell my grandkids about.
The one example I can think of that, I have this tattooed in my mind, is when I saw Saving Private Ryan in theaters for the first time, the summer that it came out. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was a summer release. But I remember that I was with a crowd. As I said, it had come out recently, so it was mostly people who had not seen it before. And there was a little baby in the audience. There's some conversations going on. I was talking. Yeah, Saving Private Ryan is not a good film to take the kids to see, I want to say. That and Deadpool. I don't know what's wrong with people. But nevertheless, there was this moment, and we were seeing it on a really big screen. There was like a huge, huge group of people there. The moment that the hatch dropped down on the landing craft in D-Day, and you just saw all these people get mowed down. I remember we were sitting in the back of the theater. We saw everyone jump. And then there's just pure silence for like the next 20 minutes. I think that was a little bit akin to what you were talking about seeing The Dark Knight, just this shared horror where your senses are being so bombarded, your emotion is being tied into so many different knots that all you can do is just take it in with dread.
Yeah.
Yeah. The gasp in the audience in the theater is just the best. Like they're the best moments in the movie theater. I think that you can. If I was a director, I would want to go to the theater and hear a gasp. I'd be like, okay, I can retire.
Well, I can tell you it's a little different as an author to be creating those, knowing that you're going to be on the other side of that book. You're not going to be seeing the gasps. You're not going to be hearing it. But it is remarkable when you do write something where it's not a moving picture, it doesn't have a soundtrack, where you're just essentially putting down a collection of words that, if done correctly, can cause that same experience, only this time, instead of it being in one localized theater, it's across the world. And there was one time where, I'm not going to spoil it in case anyone wants to read it, but in my first novel, The Great Abraham Lincoln Pocket Watch Conspiracy, I do have one scene where there's a twist after a twist. And one reader who was reading the book at, she was a staff, what was it? She was an employee over at the Mark Twain House in Hartford, Connecticut. And she told me that when that twist happened, which I'll just say it involves Teddy Roosevelt, she said she rocked devil horns and just said it started banging her head. She was so happy to see that.
Well, that's the same. I mean, I guess, do you sacrifice immediacy for some depth, though? Because I know that that's a tough statement to make, but I have been more deeply scarred and terrified by something I've read more than anything I've seen in a film, I think. There is a kind of separation. Print, the novel or the book or whatever, that can seem to get deeper into your psyche, even though I don't share that with other people immediately. So, yeah, I don't know if you give up the immediacy, but I think maybe you gain greater impact in a lot of instances.
Well, I mean, you're in a different playground. And when you're watching a film, the eyes and the ears are the senses that you're going to be interacting with. When you're reading a book, I mean, the mind is your playground. In that case, you're pulling on the heartstrings of your reader. Depending on the hour of the day, you might be, taking advantage of their fear of the dark, or the sounds around them, or the weather, the temperature around them, the heat or the cold. Or you can just, assume that you can even take advantage of your audience's familiarity with world events. They might read something that you specifically tailored to resemble 9/11 or to resemble the Kennedy assassination, or just something traumatic that all people go through that they will remember. So there are different approaches that you can do with that, but it is a challenge, but it is quite an interesting experience to be able to use the brain as your way of going into the reader, especially since I have been told, and this is probably the greatest compliment I've ever received as an author, that I have received in person and even from personal messages, compliments from people who've read my work who are blind.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, let's dive more into that. We wanted to talk to you about adaptation. And I'm not talking about the amazing Nicolas Cage movie from 2002, although we could.
I just want to say, that movie is proof that Nicolas Cage is a good actor. He doesn't write he's not a director. He's not the person who says, oh, in this scene, now just ask again how to get burned. In this scene, you just start screaming, not the bees. He's not responsible for that. He's taking cues. I really think that he has a bad rap as an actor, and I think adaptation is a great evidence to that. Anyway, continue.
Well, and he tangents. I can't help it. The fact that he plays the brothers, and they are separate people. They They move different. They talk different. They have different reactions to the things that are going on in the room. It's a tour de force.
I even think you can even see one of the brothers, I believe he starts losing weight when the other brother doesn't. He's now becoming fit. He's becoming a superior version of the Charlie Kaufman character.
Amazing. And it's interesting. I saw it pointed out in a video I was watching on YouTube that Charlie and his brother were nominated for Best Screenplay, even though his brother is fictional. So if they had won, they don't know what they were going to do there. Given two, who knows? But
no. I'm letting you know, the Academy Awards, they have had that problem before because, the Coen brothers, they use a nom de plume as an editor for quite a few of their films. I forget his name. It's like Roderick or something like that.
Yeah, I think, or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he was nominated for an Academy Award more than once. and it was hysterical because I was watching the Oscars, and I could be wrong about this. This could be a fake memory. If I am, I apologize. But if I'm not mistaken, I think I do remember watching an Oscars where the Coen brothers film was edited for best editing, and they showed a photo of who was the editor, and I'm just like thinking, my God, what family member did the Coen brothers coax into contributing this black and white photo just so that these brothers could just get a laugh?
Yeah, they've always been thumbing their nose at things like that. But we're going to dive into this idea of adapting a book to the screen. Now,
okay.
I want you to think about, because you write, is it fair to say that your books are historical fiction? Is that a fair?
Yes, very fair.
Okay. Now, they use, very famous people from history. They do new and interesting things. First off, one of your books is centered around William Shakespeare, or the works of William Shakespeare. And I thought, I wanted to ask you, who should play William Shakespeare? Or if you wanted to go into the pocket watch conspiracy, other famous people in history, who should play these parts? Compare them to, how Lincoln or other people have been portrayed previously. What would you do different? Just kind of go crazy. Let your mind go, okay, my book is now a movie. I get to decide what's going to happen with it. What's going to happen with it?
Well, very interesting you asked that, because I actually used different approaches when I wrote both books. When it came to the Great Abraham Lincoln Pocket Watch Conspiracy, it was my first novel. I had never written a book before, and I really had to learn how to do that in a way that when I was physically able of doing, delivering the book, but also in a way that was comfortable, a way that wasn't, causing me to pull my hair out or go mad. And for that particular book, I casted the entire novel. I mean, it's one of the things where people have asked who would play this person, who would play that person, and I have an email with like 25 names on it. It's like, here, those are the people.
Wow.
When it came to Abraham Lincoln, I mean, I was picturing Daniel Day-Lewis being coaxed out of retirement and playing the character again. I would loved it if that happened. When it came to Mary Todd Lincoln, I was picturing Sally Field playing her again. When it came to the main characters in the Pocket Watch Conspiracy, now, there's some laughter and some heartbreak involved. The heartbreak is that I specifically wrote the role of William Howard Taft for Philip Seymour Hoffman. And it's really sad because Philip Seymour Hoffman, my aunt and my uncle had actually met him one time. He was interested in buying a home that they had for sale in upstate New York. And he said he was a very nice man. He was, very kind, very accessible. And I was even able to get in touch with his film agent. They knew about my book. And when the time would be right, I wanted to share it with them to get his opinion on it. Unfortunately, he ended up dying soon after that. So he was always my Taft. Afterwards, though, I can tell you that in terms of actors, I think that Bradley Cooper has, those baby blue eyes that would work very well for Taft. I even thought that, I was laughing at American Sniper for such inappropriate reasons. I was watching American Sniper where he, he's a little bit more weight on him and facial hair. I was thinking, Bradley Cooper, I think he would like the fat suit. I think he would rock it. I think he would want to play Taft. Where he's, wearing a suit that makes him look 350 pounds and then he's, eating all this crazy food the whole time. When it came to Robert Todd Lincoln, I actually, there's two people who I toyed with that. I would go back and forth deciding I would either have George Clooney playing him or Robert Downey Jr. playing him. When it came to Major Butt, I actually pictured, it had to be somebody that everyone in the audience knew and was in some way emotionally attached to, like someone who's just, a very good-natured person. For Major Butt in the story, I always pictured young Tom Hanks. When he made Big and in the early 1990s when he was in Philadelphia, all those films, he was just sort of like a Jimmy Stewart of his time. And moving along, when it came to Wilkie, all right, so I'm going to try to say this without spoilers. Let me just say, when it came to the Secret Service Chief Wilkie, I personally believed that Leonardo DiCaprio, who had not won the Academy Award at that point, I have no doubt he would win the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor if he played Secret Service Chief Wilkie and Theodore Roosevelt in the Pocket Watch Conspiracy, for reasons that I will not get into. That was something I always had in the back of my mind. And even the side characters, there's so many photographs of these people. I was able to look at them and say, like, wow, he sort of looks like Edward Norton. Like, that guy sort of looks like the diabetes guy. It's hysterical. But there's this one. What's his name again? Someone help me.
Wilford Brimley, is that who you mean?
Yeah, Wilford Brimley. Yeah, there's this one guy in the book. His name is Attorney General Wickersham. His name comes with its own mustache. And yeah, I looked at this photo. I was like, oh yeah, that's the diabetes guy. But actually, you'll get a kick out of this. I had this one dream where I was in a mall, and I think I was walking past a pawn store or something like that, a pawn shop, and I saw Michael Caine there. And what I did is I came inside. No, check this out. Here we are. So I had a dream. Go ahead. All right. So I had a dream that I was walking past a pawn shop in a mall, and I saw Michael Caine there. And I came inside. I was like, "Hey, Mr. Caine, how are you doing?" He's like, "How are you, sir?" I said, "Listen, I have this one book that I think you'd be great as one of the characters in here." He said, "Oh, really? Who would you want me to be?" I was like, "Well, there's several characters in there." And I remember him saying something that I think was a joke that Kevin Spacey, I think, said about him, where he said, I'll only be in the book if two things happens. One, if I'm on the first page, and two, if I'm in the last page. So I actually thought, wow, there's actually a villain in the book who you kind of look like, who I could actually see you playing that character. And by the way, there's one quick thing I want to mention about that. Dreams actually played a very, very important role for casting in my book, to the point where I would retreat to dreams as a way of solving writer's block. Just to give you one example of that, there's this one scene in the Pocket Watch Conspiracy where the Attorney General of the United States and the Chief of the Secret Service, they meet with J.P. Morgan, the head of J.P. Morgan Bank in New York City, in this fantastic library that he has in New York City on 42nd Street. So what happens is they go to meet with him, and my writer's block is that I couldn't figure out what J.P. Morgan sounded like. I know how he spoke. I know how he wrote. I wasn't able to find any audio recordings of him, though. And I was driving myself nuts. I tried writing things down. It just wasn't coming out naturally. I was dissatisfied with it. It was driving me nuts. So I deliberately lucid dreamed. I got what I had written. I walked around my apartment for over an hour at 3 a.m., reading the chapter again and again and again. And then I kid you not, I went over to my bed and just collapsed onto the bed, fell asleep, and I was dreaming the scene. And as I was dreaming the scene, I pictured Josh Brolin wearing a bald cap and with a big walrus mustache, holding out his hand saying, "How do you do? I'm J.P. Morgan." And I was like, bingo, that's it. He would have had a deep and gravelly voice because he smoked like 20 cigars a day. And so at that moment, I cast Josh Brolin as J.P. Morgan.
Wow, this is a pricey movie, but the screencast.
It goes without saying that if this book is ever adapted to film, it's going to need like a $250 million budget. Like half of Hollywood is going to be in it, unless these actors are willing to appear in it for free, which would really help me out because I'm not a wealthy person.
There you go. Or for scale. That's what they say when they want to just they want to slum it.
Of course.
Casting. Let's talk about some of the behind-the-scenes things that you imagine happening for this. Would you adapt your own book into a screenplay? What kind of things would have to change for it to work as a film? Who do you imagine directing? Those things.
Well, I mean, that hinges on many different things. I mean, one thing is that if you're a writer like I am, if you're a young writer who's getting started, and if you're truly in love with your work, you want to see it adapted on every means. I want to see this book as a play. I want to see this book as an animated film. I want to see this book as a manga. I'm telling you, I would love to see an anime version of the Pocket Watch Conspiracy. I want to see that Zeppelin, you know, with all those detailed backgrounds and everything. I would love to see that. So when it comes to adaptations, I mean, I would feel very comfortable adapting this to film. I have a friend who is an Oscar-nominated filmmaker who I've spoken to, and he's more interested in working on me with License to Quill instead. But nevertheless, I mean, there's many different approaches I would love to take. In terms of filmmakers, I would really think that, I don't know, I mean, the truth is there's many different types of ways that this story could be spun. If Stanley Kubrick, for example, were still alive, I feel like he would just get like a few elements of my book, you know, throw the rest of the book in the garbage bin, and then like make his own story, you know, using this element of the pocket watch or the conspiracy. I would still like to see it. It's just I know that it would not be a faithful adaptation. If someone like Alfonso Cuarón or Guillermo del Toro directed it, Guillermo del Toro, I have no doubt it would be like a visual, you know, spectacle. I would love to see his imagination alive through, you know, how he would characterize and illustrate some of these people. Someone like Alfonso Cuarón, on the other hand, since, you know, his films, they always have so much going on in the background. Like, you know, he has, like, all this, you know, in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, there's all this incredibly detailed background, all this animation going on that's providing backstory. He's someone who I think would be an excellent filmmaker for capturing the depth of the world in my novel, because he would have in the background a lot of material going on that you otherwise cannot adapt literally from a book into a film that's, you know, 2 to 3 hours long.
Yeah.
I think someone like Steven Spielberg, I think he would really love the adventure aspect of it. I mean, he doesn't make adventure films anymore. I mean, I forget, did he produce Tintin, The Adventures of Tintin?
No, he actually directed Tintin. So.
He directed it.
Yeah.
Well, moving along, I think that actually no. You know who would have a whole lot of fun with the Pocket Watch Conspiracy? I really mean this. Martin Scorsese would.
Yeah.
He's probably, in my opinion, the best American filmmaker alive. He's someone who does a fantastic job when it comes to adapting material. One of my favorite adaptations that he did is is Cape Fear, which I feel doesn't get enough credit for being a reimagining of the original film. I mean, it was incredible, this sort of mirror image that he did, to the point where he even recast some of the characters in the original film, like Robert Mitchum. Instead of him being a murderer, he's actually a police officer in the remake. And Gregory Peck, instead of him being the protagonist, he's a shady lawyer. I mean, that's the kind of, like, that's just a love for cinema. And when it comes to the Pocket Watch Conspiracy, which I wrote to read very cinematically, and which includes a lot of allusions to literary works of the time period, also like many contemporary films are referenced in it covertly. Like I said, I would love to see what Martin Scorsese could do with it. But at the end of the day, I mean, like, listen, don't get me wrong. I mean, if Tommy Wiseau wanted to adapt the Pocket Watch Conspiracy, and if he wanted all to take place like on a rooftop in San Francisco, I would say, listen, like, show me what you want to do. Let's get a kick out of this. It's probably going to be a complete disaster, but I mean, it might end up becoming one of the most famous disasters in history. So I would want to see that.
Wouldn't be the first time, right?
Oh, absolutely. My God, he would. You realize that he would like cast himself as like 5 different characters. He would try to be Peter Sellers from, you know, like Dr. Strangelove, where he's like, oh, hi, I'm President of the United States. Oh, this is so wonderful. Like, oh my God, it'd be terrible.
Well, okay. Well, all right, let's go on to, in general, in your opinion, what is one time when the movies have gotten this right? Like, there was a book, the book was, you know, beloved, and then the film either, you know, extended that love, it really captured it. You know, when was the time that this worked, that adaptation was a success, in your opinion?
When an adaptation is a success, really the most important thing is that the filmmakers and the screenwriters, that they actually understand the material. Because that's the problem with Warner Brothers. Like, the people involved in Warner Brothers, I mean, you can tell from their films, they're not fans of Batman. They're not fans of DC Comics. They just know that people read and consume these products. There's not a lot of love in there. You compare that to Deadpool, where, you know, I mean, when it comes to Deadpool, like, there's, like, no great graphic novel they can turn to that they could adapt, like The Killing Joke or The Dark Knight Returns. I mean, they just got this whole crazy collection of episodes involving Deadpool, which they expertly wove into a story because they got Deadpool. They love Deadpool. When it comes to successful adaptations, I mean, it doesn't simply have to be like a big screen film. I mean, like, yeah, like Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, I think, is an excellent adaptation of what I'm in the minority here when I say this, my least favorite Harry Potter book. I thought that Alfonso Cuarón just did a masterful, very imaginative take, which in my opinion saved the franchise. I mean,
Yeah.
with Chris Columbus, his approach, you may not know this, when J.K. Rowling was first being approached by Warner Brothers to adapt her books, she wanted Terry Gilliam to adapt Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. That would have been amazing. It's heartbreaking. Like Terry Gilliam himself said, I would have been perfect for it. It would have been so imaginative. I mean, God, can you just imagine if Terry Gilliam was involved, what those first two Harry Potter films would have been like? Instead, they went safe. They went for the family approach with Chris Columbus. And by the second Harry Potter film, you know, the wheels were starting to get a little wobbly on the franchise. It was very intelligent of them to just say, you know what? Forget about this. Let's bring in Alfonso Cuarón, who Terry Gilliam himself said he really liked Alfonso Cuarón's approach, saying that's what he wanted to do. Have it dark, have it mysterious, have it, you know, being brooding and everything. That was essentially the winning franchise for Harry Potter because it was the style, that was the approach that they used in the subsequent films. So if Warner Brothers had simply, you know, listened to J.K. Rowling and actually hired Terry Gilliam as the filmmaker, I think the first two Harry Potter films would have been a much more successful adaptation.
Well, and you see that I think Cuarón is, like you said, you know, look at Children of Men, and the background is telling the story. I mean, there is
exactly,
right? But the background is telling you everything you need to know about what's going on in that world. Okay. Well, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that when it comes to Cuarón, like with Children of Men, there's something else that he does very well. He's able to very effortlessly capture the architecture of his otherwise imaginary world by showing what's going on in the background. It's almost like, imagine if you were looking at a cross-section of a skyscraper, or like imagine looking at the Empire State Building if it was made entirely out of glass. All of a sudden, it becomes a little bit like an ant farm. You can see all these corridors, all these passageways. Alfonso Cuarón is able to capture that with his filmmaking style. And with that regard, like I said, when it comes to either of my books, I would love to see his approach to it. Like, I think he would have a lot of fun with it. And by the way, there is one last thing I'm going to mention. Both my books, at some way, involve London, and they both involve ruffians quite a lot.
That's where
I'm saying this right now. Guy Ritchie, if anyone is a fan of him, I mean, if anyone is familiar with him, like, you know, give him a little copy of my book. I would love to hear his thoughts on it.
Great. Well,
yeah, this has been great. A lot of good insights, and we thank you for coming on again. And let everyone know where they can get your books again.
Yes, my books are available at any bookstore. You can go to any library, request it. You can go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores. Just tell them to get a copy. If you want to know more about my book, just follow me on Twitter or visit my author website, JacopoDellaQuercia.com.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for coming on the show. This has been the Valhalla Filmcast. Thanks for listening.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation. It's always a pleasure.
Cool.
Awesome. That was fun.
All right, thank you so much. It was great to do this again.
Yeah, it was. It was really fun.
Well, please keep... Oh, I'm sorry. You said you wanted to say something. Go on.
Yeah, before we let you go, I wanted to say thanks for sending Brandon Nobles our way. We had a ton of fun with him.
Oh, great. Yeah, he's someone who... Brandon's an interesting guy, and he's someone who's just, you know, this... You've seen... let me put it this way. Have you seen There Will Be Blood?
Yeah.
You know that little oil geyser that just explodes and it's burning into the evening? That's Brandon. If you come across a subject that he knows, even if he doesn't even know, if he just has an opinion about it, I mean, he's the kind of guy who I want to see him in TED Talks. I want to see him doing YouTube videos that get like 5 million views. He's a very interesting man. He's just someone who was a fan of mine on Twitter. We swapped information, talked to each other since then. He's a very intelligent person, very insightful, and he's someone who I just want to see more writing from him, and I want to hear more interviews. So thank you for giving him the opportunity to speak with you guys.
Yeah, we're going to have him on again, and that's a very apt metaphor because we were standing in a peaceful valley, and we went to tap the oil well that was him, and it blew up. We didn't know what to do, and oil was going everywhere. It was so it was amazing.
Tell him I said that. Like, it's sort of like the serendipity of like finding someone like that. I describe it as it's like you're digging for oil and you strike diamonds.
Yeah. He's going to come on and talk about his book with his co-author sometime soon. So.
All right, great. Well, please keep in touch, and naturally with this podcast as well. If you want me to plug it in any way, just shoot me an email. Let me know. I'll gladly put it on Twitter, and that goes for anything you guys are working on.
Will do. Thank you. And I'll send you the link to this show as well.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.